This is Pick One, Pack One with everything you need to start your draft off right. I'm your host, Gavin McKay, and I'm here with my co-host, Paul J. Camo. How are you doing, Paul?
I'm great, Gavin. This is gonna be a fun one. Today's episode is all about navigating Tarkir Dragonstorm Draft. It's also gonna be applicable for anyone who has sealed RCQs on the horizon, because there's no seeded packs or anything like that to kind of steer you when you get to playing an RCQ. It's just going to be straight up booster packs and build your deck based on what you open. So this episode is going to kind of give you some lessons that you can apply both to when you're navigating draft on Arena and when you're building some sealed pools. Before we get to that, though,
we have a recurring segment we like to call blowouts to avoid. And these are some tricks that if you are in a situation where your opponent is holding something up, or this is a new set, so we're learning the cards a lot. And so this is one of those tricks that you really want to keep your eyes open for. And the mana value on this card is pretty absurd. What is it, Paul?
It is 6 mana.
Six mana.
When your opponent, anytime you're in a game of Magic and your opponent passes with mana up, you should say to yourself, what do they have? You know, how much mana are they holding up? What tricks could they have that they could get you with? What colors are they? That sort of thing. This trick is one that telegraphs itself pretty loudly because 6 mana is a lot of mana to hold up, but don't get got by it. Read this card, Gavin, and talk us through it from your perspective.
So it's called Bewildering Blizzard, and it's a 6 mana, 4 and 2 blue instant that says draw 3 cards, and creatures your opponents control get -3/-0 until end of turn. So I think that this is almost better than Etherize, right? Like, it draws you 3 cards and basically eliminates the attacks that your opponents are making.
And it's not putting the creatures back into your opponent's hand for them to cast out again and continue to attack you with. You're able to set up a bunch of what are going to be horrible blocks for your opponent. You know, they attack in thinking, oh, I'm going to get in for all this damage, or we're going to trade a bunch of stuff. And it's like, no, stack all these things, fire this off, and then one of you is very, very sad because your board just goes away.
Yeah. There's another card that's also 6 mana that is a deflecting palm type ability that it's 3 colors. So it's not double blue. But if it redirects the damage that would have been dealt by a creature or a source this turn, stop that damage, and then redirect it to your opponent's face, and then you draw that many cards. Also a very, very good trick. But that one has a very, very high ceiling and a very, very low floor. You know, if you're only deflecting a couple points of damage or whatever. This one is a lot more consistent, works against a lot more board states, will lead to much better outcomes, I think, overall than the other card. So this one is definitely on your radar. 6 mana, again, you know, hold that up, should set off alarm bells, especially if you're playing against Jeskai or any of the other colors that are running blue. But this can really get somebody back into a game if they're behind, or if they're ahead, just decimate your opponent. I mean, can pull so far ahead.
The thing that I really like about this, Gavin, is that it has a failsafe of I'm going to draw 3 cards regardless of what else happens. Yeah. And so that's why I'm very high on this card, and I want to draft the heck out of it when I see it.
Yeah.
I'm also
it's
biased
uncommon,
to blue
so
in general,
again,
but...
you know, it's not a common or anything like that. It is uncommon, but the fact that, you know, again, it's a draw 3, great effect. And then, you know, your opponents will regret attacking you with it.
Yeah.
I think this is a great card for sure. So for this episode, moving on, we're basically going to talk a lot about the draft archetypes and how they kind of fit together. there seems to be quite a bit of overlap between the clans and the good cards that the clans would want, all the three different wedges would want. And specifically, there's some 2-color cards that you should look out for in your draft that would signal to you that, there's some powerful cards that maybe people are passing, or that you could jump into a lane and benefit from because they provide a upper-handed effect, something that will gain you value or will put you over the edge in a like for like trade, or really just gets you a ton of value. Do you want to
Yeah.
start with the first one?
So before we dive into kind of the color pairs that we're going to talk
Mm-hmm.
about, I want to talk about big picture, because we
Yeah.
talked in our last episode kind of about each clan in a silo,
Mm-hmm.
and this episode is going to be focused more on navigating color pairs to figure out where our overlaps are. But I
Yeah.
want to ask you, first of all, Gavin, what does it mean to navigate a draft?
Right. So when you're navigating a draft, you're trying to find lanes, and you're trying to find what you're supposed to be doing, because people to your left and people to your right are going to be taking cards, and it's your job to kind of figure out what they're taking so that you can take the opposite of it, or the cards that are available that are powerful to you, so you can end up with the best quality deck.
Okay.
Now, is it possible to force something? Is it possible for you to go into a draft and say, I'm only drafting Jeskai cards, I'm only drafting teamer cards, I'm only drafting these cards that that are in Mardu or whatever? It is possible. This set has a lot of fixing. This set has a lot of cards that, again, you could force it. You may not end up with as good of a deck if you force that, though.
Yeah, that's
You're
that's why, Gavin, I think of navigating a draft as drafting the deck that's appropriate for the seat that you're in,
mhm,
and part of navigating the draft is figuring out what is the appropriate deck for the seat that you're in. You
right.
might go in and say, I want to draft Jeskai, I want to draft nothing but Jeskai, and then you're getting past Sultai card after Sultai card after Sultai card. And if you're taking subpar Jeskai cards and passing
Hmm.
powerful Sultai cards, your
Hmm.
deck is not going to be as good as it
Yeah.
could have been if you had just said, okay, this is the thing that's here, this is what I should do, and
Yeah.
reacted appropriately.
And remind the viewers at home, the Jeskai versus Sultai.
Yeah,
Jeskai
so
is.
Jeskai color is a 3-color clan that is red, white, and blue,
Hmm.
and Sultai is the 3-color clan that is green, blue, and black.
Right. Yeah. And so if you're going Team America, but there's not many colors being passed that way, you might want to end up in a different configuration, so to speak.
Yeah, and the thing that we're going to look at today is that when you start to dive into this set really cares about the enemy color pairs. It really cares about white, black, white, red, blue, green, and black, green, and the clans that overlap with those color pairs. So,
Yeah.
for example, to start us off, white black, the two clans that overlap there are Mardu and Abzan.
Hmm.
So, Mardu is your white, black, and red clan, and Abzan is your white, black, and green clan.
Right.
There's a lot of carryover there. There's a lot going on with those two clans that's
Hmm.
really centered in white black. And a lot of the abilities of those clans can also play very well together
Yeah.
depending on the cards that you're looking at.
So the card that we chose for this kind of overlap is Marshal of the Lost. It's a 4-mana, 2, 1 white, and 1 black for a creature orc warrior with Death Touch. And whenever you attack, target creature gets +X till end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. And it's a 3/3.
I
So
love,
sick art.
yeah, I love what's going on here, that it has Death Touch hiding in
Hmm.
there also. It's kind of
Yep.
giving you extra something there, an extra kick. But it's
Yep.
also not when Marshal of the Lost attacks,
Yeah, it's whenever you
which is
attack.
key. It's whenever you attack. That gets
Yep.
back to the conversation we had with DFT and Boosted Sloop,
Absolutely.
whenever you attack. that's very relevant. You can keep this back
Yeah.
to keep using it.
Yeah. And the thing is, Mardu generates a lot of tokens, and Abzan makes a lot of bigger creatures with the endurance mechanic, but also can generate tokens as well,
Yep.
because tokens, they can be endured for an additional creature, in addition. And those creatures stick around, they don't vanish at the end of the turn.
Right.
So the fact that it also has Death Touch means it's a fantastic blocker. 3/3 body is nothing to sniff at either, and will definitely trade. Well, it'll trade with most anything because it has Death Touch, but the stat line is fine for 4 mana as well.
Yeah.
Moving on to our second card here, we have the Corey Mountain Stalwart. This is a 3 mana, 1 a red and a white Boros mana for creature human monk. It has the flurry ability, so it's just a keyword that means whenever you cast your second spell each turn, this creature deals 2 damage to each opponent, and you gain 2 life.
Gavin, what are
So
the two
this is
clans that care about this, and what are the
so
overlaps there?
Jeskai definitely cares about this for sure. And remind me of the other one.
Mardu.
Mardu, right? So Mardu and Jeskai getting together here. Mardu is great because you're having a lot of smaller creatures and a lot of early game plays. A lot of the mobilized cards come down on turn 2 or turn 3. So you're getting, value because you're probably going to play 2/2 drops or a 1 drop and a 2 drop for your second spell. There's a lot of overlap there. And then obviously with Jeskai, you're going to get that spell slinger-esque quality of the deck where you're adding that blue component that has a ton of card draw and other smaller effects that are 1 or 2 mana. Either counter spells. I mean, counter spells are not as good with the Corey Mountain Stalwart because you're trying to cast 2 spells a turn, and counter magic, inherently you're really only trying to cast 1 maybe in your opponent's turn.
It is really cool though that it's whenever you cast your second spell
Yeah.
each turn and not on your turn. So
Right.
firing off 2 removal spells to
Yep.
trigger this is
Yep.
still pretty sweet.
It sure is. I've found that the 3/3 body, again, relevant, but if it just comes down on turn 3 and sits for 4 or 5 turns, you can often trigger this maybe 2 or 3 times, and that's pretty big swing. That's a 12-point life swing right there. So the longer it stays out, obviously the more relevant it becomes. But certainly even triggering this a couple times feels like you're pretty far ahead. All right, so the next one that we wanted to talk about was Effortless Master. You want to take this one?
Yeah, so this is our blue-red creature.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to give you the clans of Temur and Jeskai. Jeskais are blue, red, and white. Temurs are blue, red, and green.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is a 4 mana 4/3. It's 2 blue and red for a creature orc monk. It has vigilance and menace. And it says this creature enters with 2+1/+1 counters on it if you've cast 2 or more spells this turn.
Yeah. That's a pretty big
Yeah, so this one has some flurry stuff going on.
yeah.
Obviously, caring about the casting multiple spells.
Uh-huh.
But it's also a sweet creature with a nice power that has vigilance.
Yep.
That is going to leave the ability for you to attack with it and then cast harmonized spells in your Temur deck.
That's right.
So
and
you're getting a little bit of extra value kind of hiding in there. And if you can make it bigger and you can cast your bigger harmonized cards, that much the better.
I think vigilant creatures in this set, because of the harmonized mechanic, get so much better. But also there are some cards in the set that care about being tapped. Even if you're, in the last set, if you wanted to tap something that, needed to be tapped, you could use a vehicle. In this set, the harmonized mechanic works extremely well with that. I actually think that the Temur deck and harmonize as a mechanic in general is one of the more powerful, I think it's the most powerful clan. We'll see if that reigns true at the end of the set. But I think right now, with the way that things are, Teamer is right now the rock of this format, and people are getting smashed. I know I got smashed in my pre-release in the finals by a Teamer deck that was just ridiculously good, very consistent, could usually get instant value off of the harmonized mechanic. So either they would mill it into their graveyard and then have it available to them, or they would have it, they would cast it, and then they'd also be able to cast it again pretty much right away. Because if you're casting a harmonized spell, you've already gotten value out of it, and being able to play it from the graveyard is just a bonus. But you're often able to utilize both parts of that card. I think a lot of these games are going long, and so that harmonized mechanic is really shining through as a long term value engine. So this would go in both of those decks for sure. The next one we want to talk about is this Kishla Skimmer. This is the lowest mana value of the ones on our list. It's also a blue-green card. It's 2 mana for a blue-green creature, Bird Scout. It has flying, and whenever a card leaves your graveyard during your turn, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. He's giving me a little bit of like Nadu vibes, isn't he? The Skimmer.
Gavin, this card did so much work for me at pre-release in my 3-0 deck. It was absolutely bonkers.
So the overlap here again is going to be the Teamer overlap, you know, that we were talking about before, and then the other side of that being Sultai.
Yeah.
It's a
So
Sultai
this is giving you your green, blue, and black, and your green, blue, and red.
Yeah.
And this card kind of does everything that I want to do. It
if
attacks
they don't
for
deal
2
with it
with
right
evasion,
away, I mean,
and it draws me cards.
It doesn't. It does like they have to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
Just the ability to draw cards because something left your graveyard. There's so many things in Sultai and in Teamer that would allow things to leave your graveyard, either with the harmonized mechanic or return effects, or there's a more stuff in Sultai that you can use to generate value from your graveyard. It's like there's a lot of graveyard options in this in these color pairs.
And this is where I come in, Gavin, and say, but wait, there's more. Because if you yourself don't have something to pull out of your graveyard, because you don't have a harmonize something or renew something, but you have things that you could potentially get back later otherwise, and your opponent wants to get those out of your graveyard because they don't want to deal with them, you're still going to get to draw a card as long as they're doing it on your turn. If they do it on your end, if they fire it off on your end step, don't just let it happen.
Draw your card.
Yeah. Get your card.
Yeah. Honestly, that 1 in a green instant comes to mind immediately. That can destroy an artifact, destroy an enchantment, or exile a card from a graveyard and draw a card. The effect would be reciprocal if they targeted you on your turn. So this card seems extremely good. Again, it's the lowest mana value of the ones that we're going to talk about here. I think so. It comes down early. Your opponent has to deal with it, and then can generate you so much value very quickly as well. So we also have this last one here, this Stalwart Successor. You want to take this one, Paul?
So Stalwart Successor, I think, is an interesting card that we're probably going to talk about a lot more than some of these other ones.
Yeah.
The bird is pretty straightforward. Play a 2-drop, draw more cards. Stalwart Successor is a 3 mana value card. It's 1 black and green for a 3/2 with Menace. And it says, whenever 1 or more counters are put on a creature you control, if it's the first time counters have been put on that creature this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature.
Notably, it says counters. And so if your creature gets stunned.
Yes.
Because there are stun counters in the format?
Yes. If one of your creatures gets stunned, put a +1/+1 counter on it.
Also, in Sultai, there is a mechanic called Renew that we talked about last episode where you can put Death Touch counters or flying counters or, Menace counter. There's a lot of different counters that aren't necessarily 1/1 counters, but this pumps up all of those.
Yeah.
I think this is a good card. The fact that it has Menace is great. I've always found that my opponent can wait a turn, usually before killing this, whereas some of these other cards maybe kill on sight. But it serves the same function and purpose and can generate immense value if it sticks around for any length of time. I think the stat line may be a little bit lacking just compared to the other two, the 3/3s, the one with Death Touch and the one that drains for 2. Just because it's a 3/2, it just doesn't feel as good, but it does have Menace, so it always requires a double block, which is fine. And then also the fact that it can pump itself up as well, makes it a lot better. If you can trigger it right away, it's pretty much a catch-all.
I do feel like, though, that you're just slamming this on 3 every chance you get, though,
Uh-huh.
I would be
Yeah.
happy to just start turning this card sideways, especially since there's a lot of tap lands in this format. People are going to be struggling to make their mana. That's partly why we're talking about a lot of these 2-color cards, because if you're able to make a 2-color deck that then splashes these clans,
Yeah.
you're just going to get so much free value and so many free wins out of being able to deploy your threats and just be up on tempo ahead of your opponent, regardless of whether you're on the play or on the draw.
Yeah, a lot of the folks that I've seen playing so far have really built 2-color decks with a splash of a third color, and it's been very, very productive for them. Mostly because they're looking for cards that are synergistic in individual colors a lot of times, and not unless it's a bomb that has 3 colors in it, then take that. But looking for synergistic cards that are monocolored tend to overperform. And again, in a 3-color set, 2-color cards are closer to 1-color card than the 3-color, and it'll be easier for you to cast this on turn 3 than some of these other ones. I think you're probably also more likely to be able to cast the skimmer on turn 2 than most other formats, or turn 3, but everything is kind of delayed a little bit. This set does seem slower, and the games do go long. If you don't have this out on 2, it can still be a very productive card. One thing that we did want to touch on with this set is there's a cycle of the hybrid, what are they called? 6 mana
2
cards?
grids.
The 2 grids, right.
Yeah, and we talked about these in the
primer, right?
The primer. But I want to harp on this a little bit more, because if you're in a 2-color deck and you're looking to get more value, there's a lot to be had.
So these are the common ones. We have Gurmag Nightwatch, Monastery Messenger, Reigning Victor, Reputable Merchant, and Teamer Tawnyback.
Yeah.
So of these 5 cards that are possibly 6 mana, they'll never be 6 mana. You'll always be, you're not going to run this in a deck that doesn't have these colors in them. If you're running a 2-color deck with nothing, none of these cards would be worth running it for 6 mana, but I would say some of them are worth running for 5 or 4, where you're replacing one of the split mana costs with with 2 mana. Which one's your favorite, Paul?
Teamer Tawnyback, 100%.
Yep.
I played Teamer Tawnybacks in my Sultai deck that didn't have any red to play, and I was just happy to pay the 2 mana to make it happen.
Yeah.
Teamer Tawnyback is 2 or green, 2 or blue, 2 or red for a 4/3. So I was paying 4 mana for a 4/3 that when this creature enters, draw a card, then discard a card.
Yeah, which normally you think, oh, just draw a discard. That's, not great. Although in the last set, do you remember the whale, or not the whale, the shark, the red shark? It's already fading, Paul.
The 5-drop, yeah. It also had reach, right?
Gunner.
Thunderhead Gunner.
Thunderhead Gunner.
There you go, yeah.
This one is 1 less mana. You can't do it every turn, it only does it once. But this still is a big body. I got beat down by this card. My opponent had 3 or 4 of them in his teamer deck, and he just played it on curve. And being on curve, a 3-mana 4/3 that loots, fixes your hand, is really good. Playing 3 of them in a row will win you a lot of games.
Gavin, people don't realize that this is secretly a Sultai card. It snuck into Teamerland somehow, but this is really a 4-mana Sultai card.
Definitely.
This helped me set up graveyard shenanigans so much.
Yeah.
And just did a nice job of just sculpting my hand when I needed it to.
Yeah. He just kind of followed me home one day. I mean, could you say no to this face?
Absolutely not.
It kind of looks, speaking of Avatar The Last Airbender, it looks a little bit like one of those creatures from Avatar that we might be seeing later on this year.
Yeah.
Okay, so my least favorite card of all of these common cycle is probably the Reputable Merchant. I just haven't seen this card do too much work, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is better than I'm giving it credit for, but 3 mana for a 3/3. If you put the counter on itself, and then when it dies, you put another 1/1 counter on something, it just doesn't feel that great. It doesn't feel like great value. Whereas, the Teamer Tawny back is a 4/3 base. Like, so let's say you're playing this Reputable Merchant and your opponent plays a Teamer Tawny back. This, you have to put the counter on itself just for it to trade, and it feels bad.
Yeah, I think, Gavin, the problem with this card is that this format does not have an Undying Evil effect in it.
Yeah. What's Undying Evil? Just for
Undying Evil is a 1-mana black card that you cast on a creature. I believe it was 1 mana. And when it dies, you return it to the battlefield under your control. They've done a bunch of riffs on that type of card over the years. Undying Evil is just the first one that's popping into my head right now.
Sure.
But instead, they're doing Maximum Overdrive style effects now, where instead of it dying and coming back and triggering enters the battlefield effects, it's getting indestructible and usually Death Touch or Lifelink.
Yeah.
There is one in this set, Alesha's something. Legacy, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this card is just not as good as the other ones.
No.
The fact that it's a 2/2, like, all right, so let's say if you want to get maximum value out of this card, you're going to put the 1/1 counter somewhere else. Then it has to die. And it's a 2/2, so it can die to quite a bit of things, but is your opponent really going to want to kill this? They might just let that 2 damage through, or, play it to their advantage. It's almost on you to kill it. And most of the stuff that, is going to do that, there's that Skull Clamp effect, but that just gives +1/-1. So that won't even kill this, The only thing I can think of is the 1 mana sacrifice.
Gavin, if your opponent attacks into this, you're happily going to make that trade. So
you can make a trade, but
discourage attacking.
Often we're finding that this 3 mana play, you're getting at least a 3/3, right? So, it's just going to get run over. And is the 1/1 creature enough for a chump? Or I don't know. I don't think so.
Yeah.
Again, maybe I'm hating on this card too much, but it just hasn't done much for me. I thought I was going to put it in my Abzan deck, and it just did nothing for me. So
that's fair.
Any other notable ones? I mean, this Reigning Victor has done quite a bit of work. This one is 6 mana or a red, a white, and a black Mardu colors for creature Orc Warrior with Mobilize 1. It's a 3/3, so already a leg up on the trader. But when this creature enters, target creature gets +1/+0 and gains indestructible till end of turn. So, if you're playing this on 3, you might not have something that's extremely relevant that you don't want dying, that you want to attack, but maybe you have something that'll push through a little bit of early damage in the game and just get you to a place where you're feeling stable with your spot. It also has Mobilize itself, so really you're getting 4 power when this thing attacks coming at your opponent.
I think this card is sweet, just playing it on curve to have another Mobilize maker for your tokens deck to be there. but it's also going to be great getting towards the end game where you just need to push more damage through, maybe have
Yeah.
one of your better mobilized cards live through a combat swing,
Right.
things
Yeah.
like that. And this is going to help that, you know?
Would you play this in a deck that isn't Mardu, though?
Personally, I would not as of right now. My opinion on that might change
Yeah.
as I experience the set more, but as of right now, no. I don't feel like this is doing Jeskai things or anything like that.
I do like Gurmag Nightwatch, which is the Sultai card. When this creature enters, look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may put one of those cards back on top of your library, put the rest in your graveyard. So you can put all 3 into your graveyard if you want to.
Yep.
Or if you see one that you like, you can leave it on top. I always like these kinds of effects, and a 3/3 body for that is pretty good as well. It's also enabling the things that Sultai wants to do, which is put things in the graveyard and get them back later. Like if you mill or put in the graveyard a harmonized card, you can almost immediately get value because it's a 3/3, so it'll discount the harmonized spell. The other thing is, again, these are all 3/3, 3/3, 4/3. This one's a 2/3, but it's got flying and vigilance, you know. So I just feel like this reputable merchant, it kind of got left out in the stats department. For God's sakes, it's got a giant turtle, you know.
Yeah,
give it a bigger butt. Maybe make it a 2/4.
It's definitely sad, but I do think the Monastery Messenger that you just hinted on is kind of in a race to the bottom with it. A 2/3 flying vigilance is okay, but putting back
all the dragons eat this lunch.
Yeah, that's the thing.
There's a lot of 3/3 dragons, as we mentioned in the last episode.
Yeah, I don't know that you want to pay 3 mana for this.
It's a Jeskai flying vigilance. When this creature enters, put up to 1 target non-creature, non-land card from your graveyard on top of your library. This can get back, one of the exhale cards if you used it early in the game. It can get back a draw spell. It can help you double spell, which is what Jeskai is trying to do by guaranteeing that you're drawing some action next turn. But generally, you might be like, if your opponent plays something that you can't deal with and you put the card on top before this, then you're kind of time walking yourself and not really developing out to the board.
So that's the question then, Gavin. Theory craft with me for a moment. How do you keep this card 2 or blue, 2 or red, 2 or white, 3 Jeskai mana? How do you keep this card and have the thing you get back go to hand? Because I think that's the deal breaker for me, is it doesn't go to hand, it goes to top of library.
Yeah, you might need to play this later in the game, so you're not actually playing it for the Jeskai mana.
Right, but that's what I was saying though. Theory craft with me for a moment. You're designing this card. What would you change about this card so that it would put the card back in hand? Like, I feel if you knocked vigilance off of this and made it a 2/2 or a 2/1 even, and put the card back in hand versus putting it on top of the library, sign me up for it. You know what I mean? But the fact that it goes to top of library, I feel like is too slow for what you're getting here for the deal.
What I would do is I would actually keep the effect the same, and I would keep the mana value the same. But instead of vigilance, I would say this creature, whenever you play a non-creature spell, this creature gets +2/+0 or +1/+0, just so that you're guaranteed something when you draw it next turn. You're getting either a better attacker or you're getting something that can trade up. I think a +2/+0 would be a good effect for this. It needs to have some sort of ability that adds to the fact that you're getting a non-creature, non-land spell back.
What if this was a 2/2 or a 2/1 with prowess? Flying and
a
prowess.
2/1 or even a 1/1 with, maybe not a 1/1. 2/2 with prowess, flying and vigilance would be much better.
Make vigilance go away. Just flying and prowess, because I feel like if you add
Wizards is trying to make vigilance,
it starts to be way too good.
Yeah, I think vigilance is it's a part of the blue color pie. So the vigilance part, I think, might need to stay, because I don't know if there's too many vigilant creatures in blue in this set. I don't know off the top of my head how many there are. just because they're trying to move blue in that direction. I understand the design behind it. I think you're right. The spell has to go to hand. If it needs to be more mana for that, then maybe it's. I can understand their concept with them trying to make these
The
split
cycle all
mana
be the same.
cards.
Yeah.
It's just hard to balance that effect with the rest. And obviously, we can see that there are some that are much better than others.
Yeah.
At least at the common level. And
Right.
once we get to the uncommon level, things start to change a little bit. For example, if we look at the uncommons, basically every single one of these is playable, if not a reason to be in this color combination. We can just go down the line and kind of rank them 1 through 5 if you want to do that. And we can talk about the cards as well. For me, I'll just go right down the line. I'll say Rashaka's Bargain is 1, Dragonclaw Strike is 2, Defibrillating Current is 3, Kintree Severance is 4, and River Wheel Sweep is 5. These are all very powerful effects. What do you think of that, Paul?
I'm very close to your assessment. I would start with the number 1 and number 2 that we agree on and talk people through those. Because Rakshasa's Bargain, I think, is the best one here.
Yes,
I think it
agree.
is close, but I think it is the best one here.
Let's read it.
So this is the Sultai one. Rakshasa's Bargain is 2 or black, 2 or green, 2 or blue, instant. Look at the top 4 cards of your library, put 2 of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard.
So this is basically an instant speed stock up.
Yeah.
Right? Because stock up looks at 5 and gives you 2, but it's a sorcery.
Yep.
I mean, the mana restrictions are much bigger on this card as well, but I think this card is fantastic. I mean, stock up is a great card. It's being played in pretty much every format right now.
Yeah.
Just the ability to look at 4 cards for 3 mana and take 2 of them. That's a ridiculous rate. That's so good.
And you're fueling graveyard shenanigans also on top of that.
Absolutely.
So
right.
it's not just
stock up just goes back on the bottom. This one's going to go into your graveyard. Yeah.
You're setting up for other things. You might intentionally be throwing things in your graveyard and taking lesser quality things into your hand just to set up bigger shenanigans.
You shouldn't, and the Sultai forbid you, but can you resist? You can't resist the temptation, can you? I mean, it's very tempting to draw 2 cards and put 2 in the bin. So
absolutely,
I would say that's probably the best bargain of all of these cards, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Dragonclaw Strike, because there's a lot of removal in this format. Why is this one better than any of the others, or at least one of the better removal spells?
So Dragonclaw Strike did a lot of work for me in my pre-release. It's in Teamer colors. It's 2 green, 2 blue,
2 and a green, or
2
green.
or green, 2 or blue, 2 or red. Sorcery. Double the power and toughness of target creature you control until end of turn. Then it fights up to 1 target creature an opponent controls.
Yeah.
Note that it's up to 1 and that the fight is optional. That is something that at least one person at pre-release didn't realize, that the fight was optional, and it didn't end well for them, unfortunately. But I played this in my deck, and I fought something almost every time with it. And the fact that you're doubling the power and toughness is huge, because you're not only using it as a removal spell, but you're using it as a way to potentially end the game. If you have a dragon on the field and your opponent's at a low life total, you can one-shot them with even the average size dragon if their life total is low enough.
Right. Usually fight spells have one huge downside, which is if you fight before your combat phase, you might lose that creature because it's got damage on it already when it moves to combat. But doubling its power and toughness makes that a lot more appealing, because any attacks that you would have made already just get that much better.
Yeah.
So if you're ahead, it's going to make you super ahead. And if you're playing it more defensive, it's a sorcery, so you got to use it on your turn. But if you are worried that your creature is going to die in combat, this can make it so that you get the best of both worlds. And this Dragonclaw Strike seems like a very, very good. It's not a combat trick because, again, it's a sorcery, but just being able to take your opponent's best thing and basically nullify it, you know, by doing that. The other thing too is this is like one of the only 3 colors that can deal with some of the larger spirit dragons, like the 10/10 spirit dragon.
Yeah.
That has protection from white and black. So this card would work on that. I know that we don't really talk about bomb removal, but this is one of those cards that can check all those boxes as well, and it doesn't fall into white or black for those colors.
So next up, after we talk about the top 2, Gavin, for me, Kintry Severance and Defibrillating Current kind of feel like a toss-up. Mm-hmm. And notably, they're both in white-black.
Yeah.
So for me, I would be looking at taking the one that made the most sense for the white-black deck that I was drafting at the time. Which one fills the hole that I need to fill in terms of my removal suite the best?
So my question to you then is this. Would you play these cards for more than 3 mana? Does it feel good to play these cards for 4 or even 5 mana sometimes for a removal effect like these are, and or the Rashaka's Bargain, which we already said is ridiculous? Does it feel good to play this Kintry Severance for 4 or 5? Would you still play if it was 4 or 5?
I'm not really on board with any of these for 5 mana. Rakshasa's Bargain might be the exception to that. But for 4 mana, I'm pretty on board with these most of the time. Kintry Severance, I think, gets worse at 4 mana substantially compared to Defibrillating Current.
Yeah.
But I would lean towards the instant speed on the Kintry Severance.
Yeah. That's what I was just saying as well.
If I'm just considering those 2 cards in a pack, I would probably lean towards the instant speed of the Kintry Severance in a vacuum. And so that's why I would make that my number 3.
Severance real quick before we move on. This is a Kintry Severance. It is 6 mana or a white, a black, and a green mana. Instant. Exile target permanent with mana value 3 or greater. For his crimes, burn his blood and cut him from his ancestors. Perenation is only for family. That's really brutal.
Yeah.
That's like old school Magic. Arts and effect. It's definitely not very lighthearted.
No, that's got
no cowboy hats in this.
That's got old school Llanowar's flavor text on it. Old school Llanowar Elves was like, maybe it was the old school one, not revised, but after that, one branch, one bone broken for every branch snapped underfoot or something like that. I forget which Llanowar Elves printing it was
hardcore.
But it was like super hardcore.
Instead of tapping for mana, he would just tap you out, choke you.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's swole under all those robes.
Yeah. But Kintry Severance, exile target permanent with mana value 3 or greater. Like,
that's going to deal with a lot of stuff.
It's going to hit dragons, that's super important. Take care of those things. Notably that it's both white and black, so it's not taking care of the bomb dragon that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, that's right.
So...
Yeah.
But
I mean, honestly, let's see here. So it's a mythic. It is Unari. Ureni, the Song Unending. That's the one I was talking about. Flying, protection from white and from black. When it enters, deals X damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers your opponents control, where X is the number of lands you control. But it's 8 mana. It's basically 8 mana win the game. Not to say that you're going to see this card all that often. It's a mythic rare, but this is a card that can end a game if your opponent gets it. So having at least one answer to it would be nice. And again, protection from white and black. It disables the Dragon's Prey, which is a great removal spell, even at 5 mana for this. And it also disables any of white's exile effects. So dealing with it in green, blue, or red colors is very, very challenging. I think, what we were looking at with the Dragonclaw Strike is pretty much the only way to deal with it. Not the only way to deal with it, but, one of the ways that you could have in your deck to deal with it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Do you want to talk about Defibrillating Current next?
So Defibrillating Current is the Mardu colored one. It's 2 or red, 2 or white, 2 or black sorcery. Defibrillating Current deals 4 damage to target creature or planeswalker, and you gain 2 life.
Yeah. I like this card a lot. I think right at 3 is where I would put it in this list, simply because there's a lot of 4 damage effects in this set. I can just think off the top of my head, there's 2 mana for the red Dragon's Breath Exhale.
Yep.
That deals 4 damage. The fact that this can target planeswalkers is nice, but it will not kill either planeswalker on the turn they come down, especially because this is a sorcery. And so if you plus Ugin, it's way out of range. It goes up to, I think it starts at 7, so it would go to 9.
At 7, yeah.
And then if Elspeth is there, that's 5 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. And even if you just plus 1, make 2 warrior tokens, 1/1 warrior tokens, it's going to be out of range of this as well. It will help. Well, certainly, dealing any damage to a planeswalker is beneficial, but just logistically speaking, it doesn't kill either of them. It feels kind of bad.
Yeah.
This can deal with a lot of creatures, though. I mean, again, as creature removal is, it's great, but there are some cheaper options out there, especially in, all the different exhales are all, I don't want to say better than this, but there are some other options that are even can be cast as instants, instead of as sorceries.
Well, Gavin, for me, just when you compare this to the Kintry that we were just talking about,
yeah,
they're both white-black. They both deal 4 damage. Yeah, that can kill things way smaller than 4 damage, which is nice. But essentially, when we're talking about trading up in rate, deal 4 damage might as well be exile with mana value 3 or greater. You know what I mean? If you're hitting a 6 mana 3/3 dragon with this, or a 5 mana 3/3 dragon with this, or a 4/4 dragon, whatever the case may be,
yeah,
they're kind of interchangeable. I'd rather just exile it versus have it die and my opponent be able to buy it back later somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, again, it's a clear number 1. It's a pretty clear number 2. Number 3 is debatable, but the last one, number 5 here, this River Wheel Sweep, it doesn't really work for me, mostly because it's a sorcery and the stun counters. There are some cards that like to be tapped in this set. There's also some cards that like having counters put on them. And so I find this effect to be pretty weak against certain color combinations. So if you're playing this on 3 and you're actively helping your opponent, like let's say your opponent has this Stalwart Successor, this card, you don't want to put stun counters on your opponent's creatures, really, because you would give them a benefit,
Yeah.
And that feels bad. It feels bad to give your opponent something good,
Yeah.
You want to be giving them a beatdown and not, free 1/1 counters.
Yeah. So this is the Jeskai color wheel here. This is 2 or blue, 2 or red, 2 or white. And there's a little more going on than just stunning a thing, but not a lot. It's tap target creature, put 3 stun counters on it, exile the top 2 cards of your library, choose one of them. Until the end of your next turn, you may play that card.
Yeah.
I think the thing that would sell me on this card more, Gavin, is if it said tap up to 1 target creature, put 3 stun counters on it. The fact that you are required to have a target for this makes me like, what happens if you're trying to dig because you're behind? Like, I don't want to tap and stun something random to do this,
just to do this.
I want
the other thing is it only gets you 1 of the 2 cards, so if you hit bomb or you hit something, a removal spell and a creature,
and the land you need to cast the thing,
and the land you need to get right, it feels bad. I wish it was both. You could cast both of them until the end of your next turn.
Yeah.
It is till the end of your next turn, so it's not, you don't have to, when you play this, you have 1 more turn, right? Or no, is it just that turn?
You'll have the
Your
turn that you're
next turn.
currently in because it's a
Yeah.
sorcery, and then
Right.
you'll have your
The
following
next turn.
turn to play both of them.
No, just the one, right? Because you choose one of them.
Exactly. Oh yeah, choose one of them. Yep.
Yeah. So if you just compare this at 3 mana directly to Rakshasa's Bargain, it's like not even close.
Yeah.
I'd rather have this in my blue deck than this,
Yeah.
which feels bad, you know. But anyway, those are the split mana cards. These are ones that you should just keep an eye out for. Again, common and uncommon cycle. And they can really tell you, you know, where you should be going in your draft. If you're seeing Rakshasa's Bargain, like pick 5 in your second pack or something like that, Sultai is definitely flowing. You should maybe consider pivoting there or finding some other cards that synergize with this.
But it's also nice, we're talking about enemy color pairs here. It's really nice to look at all of these hybrid cards and say, what decks am I splashing these? What decks am I just not caring about the additional color? Like, say I'm a straight Abzan deck and there's no way around it, and I get a late Rakshasa's Bargain that comes to me. I don't even need the blue. I'll put it in my Abzan deck. I'll play it,
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll play Dragonclaw Strike in my Sultai deck. I did that during pre-release. I didn't care about the red. I just paid extra for it.
Yeah, even if you don't have a generator of that color of mana, it still feels good to play these cards because even at 4 mana, most of them feel good to play.
Yeah.
Now, if you have just like a bonus tri-land or dual land that would add that color, on a splash, this set is pretty slow anyway. I've run as many as 6 or 7 tap lands in my deck and not been punished for it yet. I don't know how you feel about tap lands in this format.
I don't feel bad about them. I definitely want them to be able to play all of my spells. I'm more concerned in this format about hitting my land on time than I am about necessarily deploying threats super on curve. I think the tempo of this format is going to revolve more around, did I hit my colors before you hit your colors, than it is I played a 2-drop, I played a 3-drop, I played a 4-drop.
Which I just have to say is refreshing. I remember when we were doing our primer, when we were talking about, the speed of the format, and I was like, I really hope that it feels good to be on the draw sometimes. It doesn't feel like a death sentence if you don't have a 2-drop. And Wizards delivered. They knocked it out of the park with this one because if you don't have something to play until turn 3, you're not automatically dead.
Gavin, every time I had the choice, I chose to be on the draw, except against a Jeskai player who basically had a Boros aggro deck splashing blue. I made the choice to be on the play against them in one game because I felt like that was the only way I was gonna end the match with a positive record.
It's interesting that you could actually make an argument. It's been a very long time since you could do this. Maybe since the last Khans of Tarkir set, where being on the draw may be an advantage. Maybe that extra piece of cardboard is more important than being able to deploy your threats first.
Hitting your mana. I think for everybody who's going to play an RCQ, unless you're in a dedicated Boros or Mardu aggro deck where you just want to get people dead, I think choosing to be on the draw just is positive EV for you. You're going to get your mana, you're going to hit your colors and play your spells. I'd much rather the opportunity to play all of my spells than sitting with dead things in my hand.
Absolutely. We'll have to see what the 17 lands data says, because they track that stuff. They track play versus draw difference, and that trend has been trending towards the play continuously for probably the last 3 or 4 years.
Well, we'll definitely have to look at best of 3 numbers, because I feel like best of 1 skews that very strongly.
It's possible that the best of 1, obviously if you're only playing one game, being on the play makes sense logically
Yeah,
on the advantages there. However, um, you know, if you were on the draw in a best of one game in this set, I almost feel like you could make an argument that it's an advantage because you will have more consistency. I don't know.
I agree.
It's a weird topic to cover because we haven't really covered it before, and it's a brave new world. I'm
I
excited for
think
it though.
I think that in the dark, best of one, I'm gonna choose to be on the play every time I have the choice because I don't want to be out tempoed by the aggro deck.
Because you don't know what their deck is at that
Right,
time.
right. But if we're talking best of three, if we're talking paper magic at an
Mm-hmm.
RCQ or FNF, I'm probably choosing to draw every time I'm given the choice in best of three.
Interesting. Well, I think that leaves us with a lot of questions and things that we can definitely think about. Is there anything else you wanted to touch on with this set? Anything that you're extremely looking forward to? Draft is coming up now that the pre-release is over, and I really can't wait to draft this set. I think it's going to be very fun. I'm
I
calling this now. This might be the best set of the year, and Final Fantasy, Spider-Man, and Avatar have a lot to live up to.
100%. I'm very hyped on this set. I'm still excited to see what Edge of Eternities has to offer also.
Mm-hmm.
But
Can't forget about Edge of
I would agree
Eternities.
with you right now. This is the set to beat for the year for limited set of the year.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think hats off to the R&D team. They did a fantastic job with this set. This is one of the first 3-color sets that I've ever played,
Oh yeah.
just in paper magic, just because the other ones were, before I started getting back into magic again. So hats off to them for making it accessible for all the folks that joined maybe during Lord of the Rings, maybe during Bloomborough. New players getting introduced to this 3-color concept can be a bit tricky. So hats off to them for making it more accessible and easier to understand. I also want to say, just really quick, it's been crazy popular. I definitely underestimated how popular this set was going to be because some of the events that I've gone to, they've been capped. They capped the entry at 100 players, and that usually only happens. Well, I've never actually seen that happen in a game store before, at least not in a very, very long time. But also, it just shows that the game is growing and it's inviting more players to come into the store and support their local game stores. Shout out to Tabletop in New Britain. You guys are great. You know, I'm really happy that this game is growing and that folks are really enjoying it.
I'm a huge fan of original Tarkir. I was really happy to come back to this plane. And I think we're also seeing a little bit of the nostalgia factor there playing a role too, because it's been 10 years now almost since we were on original Tarkir. It's been about 10 years since we were on original Tarkir, maybe 11 at this point. Boomer brain not remembering when that set was. But this set's great. I'm enjoying it 100% so far. So I hope that continues to be the case when I'm 20 or 30 drafts in,
Yeah. What's not to like about dragons, man? Honestly.
Nothing.
All right. Well, with that, we thank you so much for listening. You can always follow us on Blue Sky, Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you make sure you like and subscribe. We really appreciate you guys participating and telling us how you've liked the set so far. Is there anything else that you want us to talk about? We're going to be doing a draft along probably in the next few episodes here, where we'll actually dive into some of the picks and hopefully draft a really sweet deck. But stay tuned for the rest. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will pass the turn, move to the end step.
See you guys later.
Bye, everybody.